It's great to be with you once again. We are having our conversation, which we hope you can jump in with too. We're going to look today about what will be the needs of the young people as they come back into our groups, and how do we address those, and what do you think that we need to be equipped and ready for supporting them the best that we can.
So the first area we're going to look at is the whole area of anxiety. I don't know whether you have experienced that yourself, but certainly many young people over this period have experienced anxiety over a number of issues, not least. It's quite scary knowing that there's a virus out there that nobody can control, and that has led to an anxiety while people have been in lockdown. But there's a whole different set of anxieties that are connected with, but for some young people, with coming out of lockdown. Home is, and being locked down at home and staying at home, for some young people, has become a very secure place. It's almost like they've kind of curled up in their own little nest, and that's a safe place to be. And so the idea of now I've got to go to school or college actually is a very scary thing. Will I be safe? Will the virus get me on my way to school as I travel in a bus with other people? Or will I be safe? Will the social distancing work? Or will it be effective? And particularly as we hear anecdotes from particular geographies of where that's not worked well and where it's gone wrong, that creates more anxiety and feeds the anxiety that some young people have. Of course, for some young people, school wasn't a safe place, even before lockdown. They experienced bullying, they experienced maybe low level or maybe quite overt and difficult, but something that was never dealt with and they haven't been able to escape from. And so this intervening period where they've not been in school or college has actually been a safe time for them because they've not had to confront that face to face. And prospect of going back to school or to college means the prospect of going back to that bullying and those that bullied them. And so for them, that will create anxiety too. I guess the other one that I think might be quite common is related to education itself. So some young people have engaged greatly during lockdown with virtual learning, and they've really got stuck into it. But certainly talking to young people themselves and talking to some parents too, there are definitely young people who haven't engaged very much at all. And I've heard too frustration from teachers. There's not an awful lot they can do about it except keep trying. Some of those young people, and but those young people are going to go back to education feeling like, well, I know I've missed something. I know there are gaps, and that creates an anxiety. Will everybody else be much further ahead than me? Am I going to keep up? Am I going to be at a disadvantage immediately? Should I even bother? And so there's that. Those are just perhaps three areas, but there are undoubtedly more too. Areas of anxiety. As young people prepare to go back. We may see that manifest. They may talk about that with us as we have conversations with them. We may want to open up those conversations and just create the forum where young people can share and discuss those things together.
I think another area is the area of rejection and abandonment. Young people feeling like as soon as lockdown happened, they got abandoned by potentially their social worker or people they were looked after by their teachers. Not that necessarily was the case, but that's what it could have felt like. Also maybe at home when parents are physically there but have to work, maybe some young people are feeling rejection through that and feeling their parents aren't as present as they used to be. So there are different ways in which young people might have experienced rejection, or feeling abandoned by those that took care of them before. Even regular clubs they used to go to, places where they felt safe and secure, where people looked after them, invested in them, and all of a sudden that contact didn't happen. If we think about our schools groups that happen in schools, and not being able to be in touch with those young people because of how the regulations were. And it's just journeying through with young people that we were not abandoning them, we were not rejecting them, and helping them process that even their parents weren't rejecting them, and just trying their best to look after them in a different way. And so how can we have the conversations about what are the ways in which they might feel rejected or abandoned, but how can we see that it might have been just a different way of care, or due to the circumstances, the possibilities might have been limited, and how can we help love them securely and be persistent in loving them, because sometimes those causes or those hurts of rejection and abandonment make it a little bit harder for the young people to open up. So don't give up when the first time they say they're fine. Just keep loving them, just keep investing in them and journeying with them.
I think a big one is a sense of loss as well. And as Anna said, while people are working this through, and our young people are working this through, we ourselves are as well. And so what we talked about in the previous video about vulnerability and being open about the struggles we're experiencing is actually a really helpful thing. A sense of loss will be different for every single person, but we will have all experienced loss during this time, whether it is the loss of loved ones, whether it's the loss of a way of life or freedom. So many of our young people may have felt that their opportunities have been limited by COVID, whether that's university places or getting their exam grades or whatever that is. Though that feeling of loss of opportunity or potentially an impact on their future will be an important thing to kind of work through for those young people. So many of them will have had a last day of school that they missed, and so they didn't get closure from their previous school life before moving into a new and bigger and scary new school. A lot of our young people will have had a sense of loss over not doing their exams. I know that might sound strange, but a lot of young people actually, although they were concerned for their exams, and they had actually worked really hard to get those grades, and then to potentially feel like they hadn't earned those grades or they had got the wrong grades will be something of a feeling of loss for many young people. A lot of their households might have had a loss of income, or they might have been shielding. And so for any of our young people who themselves or their families may have been shielding or have health problems, there's a potential lack of equality in that. So they may have been having to shield in their homes, not because of anything they've done or anything else, but they might be feeling an accelerated and further sense of loss of opportunity, of freedom, and all of those things. And let's face it, we've all experienced those feelings to some extent. And so it's important to explore what that means and what the impact of those senses of loss may be, and that will look different for everyone as well.
Yeah, and I think also there's maybe some negative coping mechanisms that have come into play over this last 6 months. And that could be because of the isolation, the sense of loss, the sense of abandonment or rejection or anxiety. We've leaned on things that might not have been as helpful in the long term. And within young people, the coping mechanisms that may have started to raise their head because of the roots of those issues may be things such as self-harm. It may be the use of finding company online, so going into chat rooms that really aren't that appropriate, maybe looking on to websites that maybe are pornographic or in some way fantasy that's escaping the current reality. And for all those things, they're coping mechanisms to get through, but actually can end up being quite destructive. So how can we find the right types of questions to understand how have young people engaged their time in their isolation, and to be able to help them journey through. Now, some of those are quite big topics and they will need more than just a conversation. And so we're going to put on the resources where we would signpost you to get the specific help for those types of issues. And we hope that even if you have maybe found any things that have taken you a little bit further away than from what you would normally cope with and more life-giving ones, then be in touch with us, see how we can support you, and also the contacts that we'll put within our screens. There's some great charities out there that we can help signpost you to, that have been great sources of strength on all of these topics. Be aware that we don't have to have all the answers ourselves. Helping people to find help is still helping them, and this long-term journey that we're committed to young people is always going to be, a long walk in the same direction. So have a conversation with your team, have a conversation with your young people, hear what they're saying and hear what they're not saying, and get accomplished with the questions that you can ask to bring out all of these things that have gone on. In our next video, we're going to be talking about the tools that you can help the young people journey forward in discipleship and the holistic living of their lives. So we'll be able to bring some maybe great questions of how to bring